Hello, everyone. This is Dan Reeves, and I welcome you to the Spiritual Underground Podcast. If you're just coming along this podcast for the first time, it is primarily 12-step recovery. A great deal of my content is people who come and sit down and tell their 12-step story of what it was like, what happened, and what it's like now. And this miraculous change that happens to people as a result of working the 12 steps. But I also have guests coming from all over the world asking to be on my podcast. It's actually humbling that I get guests from, well, today's guest, Sunshine, is from Detroit. I don't know that I've ever had anybody from Detroit on the podcast. Last week, a guy was in Hawaii, I think, and they've had people from New Zealand, Thailand, all kinds of places well, bringing sunshine to the show. So their brand of sunshine. So how are you doing today? We just kind of already got a little of that going, but for the listeners, you're doing pretty good today.
I'm doing really good today. I've been looking forward to this show pretty much since I woke up and saw it on my calendar this morning. So yeah, I'm good.
Good deal. Did you grow up in Detroit? You say you were lived there all
I
your life?
did. I actually grew up. The hospital I was born in is about a mile and a half from my house right now, and the house I grew up in is probably about 5 miles from my house. So yeah.
Yeah, I'm in the house I grew up in. Uh, we moved here when I was three. Now I moved away and got married and did some things, but I ended up buying my mom and dad's house back. And right now, my 87-year-old father lives with me, and my 21-year-old son lives with me. And I also
Three
I
generations.
also have a 19-year-old daughter that lives with her mother about a half a mile away. And as
Hmm.
I said a minute ago, I've got a brother that lives about a half a mile away also. So we keep it pretty close around here. Nobody wanders too far. So what are you bringing to here today? How did you end up on my podcast?
Mm. My guess is rest her soul. I had a very beautiful assistant that had been helping me out for a long time, find places. She unfortunately passed away in April very
Mm.
suddenly. But yeah, that was wow. She, raised the flag, said this sounded perfect. I agreed. And, I I may have a different path in my recovery, but my recovery started in the 12-step program.
Oh,
So
did it?
yeah, I'm familiar with it.
Yeah. We we also do another podcast and have a program here in Louisville where we offer the 12 steps to anybody who might want to use them. You don't have to be an alcoholic or an addict or a overeater or a gambler or anything. It's just if you just want some tools, uh, and it's effective for those folks as well. It's
I used to joke with my therapist when I first stepped in that there should be a program and they should call it just Life Anonymous.
That's
You
kind of
know?
what we do. Yep.
Yeah, right? Like these apply to anything, you know? I mean, I was just kind of shocked that it was this secret around, substance abuse or addiction, so to speak. Like, what?
Yep, yep. We call it I am one too, like a little I,
Mm.
like iPad, and the letter M, and a one and a two. And instead
Mm.
of in the meetings, we identify as that. We just say I am one too. I am one too.
Mm.
And basically we're all the same. We're all here just trying to
That's
gain
lovely.
tools and do this, try to make the best of this trip on this big blue marble. Uh, Everybody's got something.
I would agree with that. I don't know, I think addiction touches so many in ways that, maybe there isn't a word or even a way to see it, but even outside of the addiction, from the trauma, from the chaos, from the drama that people get involved in, just, if you're not living a life filled with peace and ease, then there are certainly changes I believe you can make.
Yep, yep, definitely. Uh, so what do you do? What Tell me a little about yourself and what you're up to.
Yeah, I mean, right now, this past weekend, I launched a book tour, which was kind of incredible. Uh,
Nice.
yeah, I've got 5.5 years in recovery from alcoholism, And, as I mentioned, I stepped into recovery. I mean, I had two relapses in 2019. And finally, I just, the ego dropped away. And I was like, I can't do this on my own. Like, who am I kidding? Like, I don't know how to do this. Like this is wild. And I messaged the one person that I knew in my circle who I hadn't seen or literally talked to face in, I don't know, 20 years, but I
Wow.
knew they were in recovery themselves. And I said, I need some help. Can you take me to a meeting? And yeah, so I stepped into recovery in the 12-step program. And, you know, I will still recommend it. I will still suggest it. I will still support it wholeheartedly. As we were saying, like there's some really phenomenal tools that are given in the 12 steps. Uh, but for me, I've identified as a witch spiritually since I was 16 years old. And though I felt welcomed because I grow up, the area I live in is half Muslim, half Christian. So people were pretty like tolerant of not pulling too much of a Christian or one religious influence into the meetings. It was still strange. It was still a little
Yeah.
bit awkward. Some of the things I wanted to do, uh, some of the challenges I had, like following what I was told, which included 5 no's from sponsors, requests of sponsors. I got 5 no's.
Oh,
Um,
really?
yeah, I had 5 women tell me no. They didn't have the capacity to take on another sponsee. And
Huh.
I was kind of like, you're not the first person that's been like, that's interesting, right? And so I did 90 meetings in 90 days, and there's one thing I noticed with the people that truly appeared to be happy and content and filled with peace in their recovery. These long timers that were just like not just doing the steps, but just living a life of purpose. And that was every single one of them had embraced whatever they defined as their spirituality.
Hmm.
Every single one of them. So I took a step back and I like had to, look myself in the mirror and say like, what's mine? Like, what's my church? What's my Sunday service, so to speak? And as I said, I've been a practicing, witch since I was 16. But I'd done it at that point like I was born and raised Catholic, so it reminds me of the people that are Catholic and they only go to church on the like major holidays, That's
Hmm.
what I'd done. I'd done even the witchcraft and the practice. There's a new kitten in my house.
Wow.
Yeah, I know.
It
She is
seems that
nuts.
cats like Zoom. I see a lot of
Yeah.
cats on Zoom.
Yeah, and I think it's the moving stuff on the screen. But yeah, I decided to pick up my cards, my tarot cards, and I started to offer, these free services, readings to people on a weekly basis. It was my way to practice my spirituality, and I started pulling cards for myself every day. And it was just different. And even I did end up finding a sponsor. One of the ladies that said no had one of her sponsees sponsor me. And I would love to say that it was this amazing thing. And it was very good for the length that it was.
Huh.
Um, but about 2.5 months in, after meeting with them weekly and starting to work these steps, like literally with a sponsor, I got a text message that said, "Hey, can we talk?" And I said, "Yeah, absolutely." And they said, they said to me, I just wanted to let you know personally that I have decided to leave the AA program as well as the church I've been attending and try to go find out what really matters to me.
Hmm.
And I was just like, this is, and once again, I've said this to a lot of people, and this person had 3.5 years in the program.
Yeah.
right? And just walked out of it. And so I'm just like, something's weird, something's off. And the more and more I started to really embrace the fact that the part that A of AA and the 12 steps that I really, really kind of was drawn to was this the spiritual path side of it. This, like, it is encompassing of a spirit. It is trying to help you understand that there is purpose outside of ourselves. The more and more I started to realize that there was a way that I was starting to work those steps, so to speak, that were more aligned with the way of a witch.
Hmm.
And so after 1 year of doing things slightly different, I sat down and started to write a book. And I took a whole year of writing that book. And that in itself was a whole kind of healing part of my journey because it started uncovering things that I'd hidden, like, in my subconscious as I would sit and write. And
Hmm.
it was just really intense. So I've finished it and put it to the side. And then last year, my higher power, however you want to refer to it, the spirits, the universe told me it was time to publish.
Oh,
So
wow.
last fall I edited it, and this past winter I self-published it and released it on the start of spring.
Very cool.
Yeah,
And I know that's a
yeah.
big deal. That's no small feat. My sponsor is an author. I
Mhm.
watch, and I suppose everybody has a process. But boy, it takes some dedication to write a book.
It did. I have dear friend that runs a kind of like a creative kind of writing dates, every 2 hours every week. And I use those 2 hours almost every week for that year that I wrote. And it
Hmm.
did. It took me an entire year to write that first draft. The editing process was more intimidating than the writing process, right? Because you're like, oh gosh, I got to edit this, I got to finish it.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was, it was a process in itself, but the journey through it and what it showed me and what came out in it, and it was really intense and beautiful. Yeah. So I started to this past weekend, I ventured out and went to Cleveland and went to Pittsburgh and started to walk into stores and talk about it and see if they wanted to sell it and see if they wanted me to come back and do an event, which is just, you know, and for anybody that's never put themselves out in a vulnerable situation, it was very intimidating and
Yes.
scary. But man, was it worth it. Every single person that I talked to, it was well received. And there was
Very nice.
so many sentiments of, wow, this is needed. I'm so glad you did this.
Hmm.
Yeah.
So I am not real familiar with that. I know people who, you know, I'm a yoga teacher.
Mm,
And so that's got me in some communities that's probably where I started running into people who do card readings at
yeah.
like yoga festivals and this kind of thing. Uh, but I wouldn't put the two together. I wouldn't think witch at the same time. Help me
Yeah.
understand a little bit about what do you mean when you say that? That
Yeah. So if you talk to I'll clarify one thing because it pops into my head. There is a literal religion that's referred to as Wicca that some people, when they think of the word witch, that's what they think of,
I've heard of
right?
that.
And Wiccans, the religion of Wicca does incorporate, kind of witchcraft into its dogma, so to speak. My own personal philosophy around what defines a witch is there's three pillars to it. And that first one is what you're talking about, the cards. A witch is going to leverage and use their psychic abilities. They're going to believe in the art of divination, right? So tarot cards are a way to do it. Even dowsing rods, right? People
Hmm.
find water with dowsing rods. That's a
Yep.
form of divination. Like, where is this water at? I'm going to use that. Um, there are other just psychic abilities. Just, I can sit with someone and if they ask me questions, I'll get pictures and answers in my head or I'll hear things. So that's the first one is this belief in psychic abilities or divination. The second one is the belief in magic, right? And so magic, I think a lot of people, when they think of magic, they think of, well, I don't mean magician as in sleight of hand, but they think of some of the things like, hey, do you do dark magic or do you do white magic in this? But even the act of the law of attraction is a form of magic. It's believing that we can, as a human being, we can shift and change energy in order to bring something about, right? And
Yep.
so that's the second pillar. And my third pillar, and this is the one that some people may or may not agree with. The first two, pretty much anyone, that's going to talk about a witch or witchcraft or anything, they're going to talk about those two. But my third one is that as a witch, I believe that witches are to be of service in the world. And if we think back into, I don't care if we're talking about folklore, we're talking about history, like witches are the individuals that once upon a time were in the community that people went to in order to be healed. They went to understand what was going on with, maybe the nature of the environment. There's these crazy storms coming in. They weren't predicted, you know. Uh, they these individuals, and it's often predominantly a female kind of practice, uh, but it's not just, but these individuals often are of service to their community. They can also be of service just to their family.
Mm.
Right? So think about the woman that stands at the stove or the father that stands at the stove and they're making a pot of chicken soup and they know it's not just the chicken and the noodles and the carrots and the celery, it's the love that they put into it.
Yeah.
Right? They can be of service in that way as well. So that's my philosophy of those three pillars, this belief and this use of our psychic abilities and divination, the belief in the use of magic in your life and the calling to be of service to the world.
Yeah, it brought to my mind like and I don't, again, I'm stretching here, so forgive me. Like Native Americans, the have witch doctors
Yep,
that have special powers and have a connection to a higher power that can. And I don't know too much about
absolutely.
it, but I've read some, and
I have
it brought that to mind when you were talking about that.
Absolutely. I have a very dear friend that's Indigenous. She's part of the Ojibwa Nation, which is stretches both from Canada and into Michigan. And we've had lots of conversations around that on how those practices, right? And like how the things that she does is, aligns with the philosophy that I lay. Whether or not somebody chooses to use the word witch, I don't really doesn't matter to me,
Yeah,
right? But these philosophies are seen through a lot of the indigenous cultures, a lot. And it doesn't matter if we're talking about, here are the Native Northern Americans, if we go down into Mexico, if we go all the way into South America, they are
yep,
very commonly used when we're talking about indigenous cultures. There is somebody in the community, in the tribe that was responsible for knowing the plants, knowing how to put them together, knowing how to heal, right? Knowing how to tend to land, knowing how to bless land, right? All of these types of things. I mean, like I said, if you go back into, folklore, mythology, even history, every single one of them will start to show that we go back a really long time. We've had a role in society for as long as society has existed.
yeah. So I suppose you could also interchange shaman for the same term too. Uh,
Certainly can.
you know, for whatever reason, when I think of the witch, I think of the witch burning stuff of the one
Mm-hmm.
period in time. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
and of course, witch has also got an ugly side to it in some history too, from, the Wicked Witch of the West and
And
this kind of stuff too. But we're talking about something different. This is more like what I'm hearing is more like a shaman type of energy.
yeah. Yeah, there's a really phenomenal book called Waking of the Witch by an author, Pam Grossman, that I love very much because she goes through a lot of this history of what, the witch and like how exactly as you're saying it's been portrayed and why it's been portrayed that way. And a lot of it's because of fear. I mean, think about this. If you walk into a room and the person standing there can know and understand what's going on with you, what your future is, could potentially set intentions to either heal or harm you, right? And who knows whether or not, what they're truly aligned to, like that service piece. It can be frightening and scary. It truly can, right? But in that regards, ignorance is probably the cause of a lot of fear and hatred in this world.
Yeah, yeah, no
Yeah.
doubt about that. Uh, I definitely have experienced some like law of attraction type of stuff and some sort of manifestation in my 12-step life. I don't know, you know, I'm more of the feeling of that there is a power greater than myself working for my good that I am in contact with more so than it's something that I'm actually doing. But sometimes those lines seem to be blurred at times. I joke around about like, I don't play the lottery, but I feel like maybe I should. uh,
It's a symbiotic relationship, and is my belief, right? We have this, and it's, whether we talk about, you want to refer to it as a higher power, a God as a creator, spirit, but we have this energetic that exists. We have this connection to, this conscious, etheric side of the world that nobody can explain. Let's be real, like science tries, but good luck trying to explain everything,
yeah,
right? And it's a symbiotic relationship. If they wanted to put something into your path, they're going to put it into your path to take action on. So how are you not a part of it?
yeah, yeah,
Right? It's a symbiotic relationship. So it's the same thing. Like if you needed to write a letter to someone to get a grant, right? Well, who's to say, it's not, that's not the piece of it. Who's to say that as you sat there and held that grant, that letter, and you got ready to put the stamp on and you thought like, this is it, and I'm going to do this, and right, like that's not all part of that magic, right?
yeah, right.
You know, as a,
Yeah,
as a witch or as an individual that practices magic, because not every person that practices magic is going to call themselves a witch, right?
right.
uh, you start to learn and understand about the universal laws, and that's where the ability to be able to work with that energetic and do so consciously changes, right? So I'll give you a perfect example. I think the reason why you in recovery are able to see and bear witness to that is because the life that you live is filled with more what we'd call like a high vibrational energy.
Hmm.
It's the type of energy that's able to do that. But if you were still in active addiction, still feeling pangs of guilt, shame, sorrow, anger, resentment, good luck. Like you can't, it's hard to do any type of magic or manifestation in that type of energetic field,
Yeah, right. Yeah.
right?
Um, it's like a static or something. It blocks, there's a thing that says one way it says in the big book is that it blocks us from the sunlight of the spirit. Uh, and it does that. And once you get all this stuff cleared, I call it like from my yoga side of things is coming into alignment. Once
Mm-hmm.
I come into alignment, like my true north alignment, once I do that, things start going like good for me,
Yeah.
things the I say the skids are greased. I rarely have to fight for stuff. It comes, most things come easy.
Yeah.
Um, and another way I put it when I'm talking to my new guys, it's like there's this big giant extension cord that runs through the universe. And once you get your uh, world cleaned up a little bit, you get your karma balanced, another way of maybe putting it, then you actually get to like plug into that cord and pull from that energy that's this energy source that's running through the
Yeah.
universe.
The picture that I get in my head is like a battery, like if you got a battery that has like corrosion on it, doesn't matter. It's never going to be able to put any of that into it. You have to
Yeah.
clear it off. You have to
Yeah.
make sure that there's a good connection there.
Yeah.
You have to
Like,
make
yeah.
sure that you're
Cruddy battery terminals, no doubt.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
It is interesting. And, we have these guys, I call the 12 steps somewhat magic. It's a magical process. It's very interesting to watch and have people come in. And, when I meet people, they're pretty beat up, their batteries are very corroded at the moment. And we say that, there's a line in the book that says their problems are piled up so deep they could hardly believe they can ever solve them all. And then as we do this work, these things just start sloughing off. Like, they'll be looking at jail time. And all of a sudden, I showed up at recovery looking at 6 to 20 years in the Indiana Department of Corrections. I didn't
Mhm.
spend a day in jail. I worked these steps. The judicial system did not care and they even told me that we don't
Yeah.
care that you're good. I'm happy for you that you're doing something good, but we're here to uh, hold you accountable for the crimes you committed. They didn't. No matter how good I was going to be from here on
Yeah.
out, and but some kind of magic happened, and I didn't spend a single day in jail. And I've watched other people do the same thing, and I watch relationships get healed and troubles slough off of people when they get themselves into alignment, and they won't believe you, that you're telling them, hey, if you will do this, if you will walk with me.
Yeah.
I kind of like, come on, just follow me, as I'm
Oh,
walking backwards, and pull them through this work, and then sometime down the road they're going, you're never going to believe what happened. What happened?
yeah. That's
uh, this straightened out and that straightened out, and sometimes it doesn't. Not always does it, but
yeah.
most of the time it does.
Yeah, no, even before I stepped into recovery, I've been a leader and I've been a coach in my roles and, I've done the same thing. And it was I agree. I think the 12 steps are, magical, but at any point, if you wanted to make a change, like if you're not happy with how your life is, you will never change it, unless you admit that it's not working in the first place, right? And that is right there, like seeing what the true state of something is the foundation for any change. Even if we want to talk about literal, like, we're going to go into a lab and try to do some scientific experiment. We need to know and understand first what we're working with to know how everything else will react about it. So no, I agree. I think the 12 steps are magical. And that's why I said I will never, I would always encourage folks, especially because I lead 2 free recovery circles a week. I'm one person and I can't be there 24/7 for folks. I'm like, if you need it, like here's the link for Southeast Michigan. Let me go find you the link for where you're at. Right? Go sit down at a meeting and, I don't care if you talk, just listen, right? Just don't be alone. That's like one of my biggest things. Don't be alone, right?
Yeah.
Addiction, I have come to find, and I don't hesitate to call it like a demon, right? It is something that is just sick. It is sick and it will try its darndest to isolate you. It put you alone, put you in your room, in a hotel, in a motel, on the corner, just, and make you feel miserable, like you're the only person in the world that's dealing with this problem, that you are just too horrible to be able to get some help, and it'll keep ringing in your ear, right? So until you admit that the aloneness has got to go, right? I watched a handful of folks, in the last 5 years that have come to me and connected with me, and that's the first thing I tell them. Like, if I start seeing them pull away and isolate, I'm like, I'm scared. I'm scared for you, and I'm concerned.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, I call it drifting. I watch people
Mm.
begin to drift. They'll be all in for a while, and then they start drifting, and that's dangerous territory.
Yeah.
I also like it. I heard somebody talk about it as uh, like a computer virus. It's like hijacks your operating system,
Yeah.
and it really does. It makes you do stuff that's contrary to your core values. It'll have you doing things that you would not normally do. And we are communal animals. We need community around us. There are the rare individuals that can get away with that solo stuff, but uh, I have a wonderful men's home group that I wouldn't give up for anything.
Mm.
It's just a bunch. Well, we just had. I am fortunate enough to own some property here in Southern Indiana, and I have an annual men's retreat, and it was just this past weekend. And I think when I counted, at one point we had 29 men there, and we spend the whole weekend and do fellowship, and we have meetings and do recovery oriented stuff. And the main thing is to get the new guys involved. And we
Yeah.
had a full third of us were either new to the retreat or in their first year of recovery.
Oh, wow.
Thirds, and you can just see them. They buy in because of that
Yeah.
weekend. They're like, they see us on Tuesday nights, and there's that kind of thought of like, yeah, y'all can pull this off for an hour on Tuesday, but you spend the whole weekend with us, and you go, hey, they're actually like this. They're like this all the time.
Yeah.
And it really does. It's a lot of fun, and we do other things. Like these. One of our buddies owns a place on that river. I was just talking
Mhm.
about earlier, and he has get-togethers, and they go kayak and canoe and just splash and have fun playing around in the water and doing little trips. And there's another group of us that I've been on the trip a couple of times. So they go out to Colorado and elk hunt, climb up a mountain, and some of them fish and some of them, but they just it's a that what was there's a guy that says Johann Hari, the opposite of addiction is connection.
Hmm. Yep,
And
I've
you
heard that
gotta
one before.
gotta
I
build
agree
that
with that.
connection with people.
Yeah, I agree with that. And that's a lot of, you know, what I am trying to do with introducing another way. I mean, I've talked to so many more women. There's a handful. There's like for every 10, women that come around, there's one man that'll come around into the circle. But every single one of them share the same sentiment of feeling like an outcast. I don't know if you would have ever watched this, but when I was growing up, one of the movies that came out was this movie called The Craft, and it was about four girls in their teenage years that became witches. And, you know,
It rings
so
a bell.
yeah, so there's this line in it, and the line is, "We are the weirdos, mister." Right? And that's because like so many of us that have practiced witchcraft, believed in things like spirits, our ancestors, that we can talk to, the other side, that we enjoy, like we are often kind of ostracized.
Yeah,
People like start to do this, they're like, get away, that's the devil's work has been a very, very prevalent. Being told that they're doing the devil's work. And I'm like, how challenging is that if that is what you truly believe and what you are drawn to, and yet you've got friends or family that are chastising you? How hard is it to stay in recovery if the
yeah,
one spiritual path that you're drawn to,
hmm
you're shamed for?
yeah. Well, that's what, and you can get it anywhere, but the whole premise of a, a higher power of your own conception, whatever you want to relate to, and for the most part, 12-step recovery allows you that, and you can
Yeah.
pick what you want to pick, and nobody chastises you because of it. Again, there's always that,
I got
here
pulled
and there,
aside.
but
Yeah, I got pulled aside, which was a little
but
weird, but yeah,
if
yeah.
you wanted to, I mean, honestly, how can it be any weirder than believing in a big guy with on a throne with a beard and a staff. I mean, that's pretty weird too, you know.
But
Uh,
I've also, so as I said, I was raised Catholic. And I'm like, I've asked people this. I was like, have you ever gone to a Catholic mass before? I don't know of any religion, that doesn't do the acts of magic, right? Like Catholic Mass is literally like, the body and the blood of Christ. And I'm like, that is like that right there is considered a correspondence. Like you truly believe and you believe in the power of what it's about to do. Same thing if you talk about, any of the other religions. I forget which which one is. Is it evangelic that does a lot of the faith healing? I'm like, this is all magic in some way,
yeah,
right? And because you want to cast some type of judgment or you want to state that your way is better than my way, right? Like there are so many of us that are out there that are still struggling with shame because they're drawn to this path and they have a hard time in their communities not being judged for it.
yeah, that's a shame, no doubt.
It is. It
The
is.
uh, the world will be a much better place if, well, the war, most of the wars and most of the trouble of the
Hmm.
world is because, I got a problem with your belief system, or,
Yeah.
that somebody has a problem with somebody else's belief system,
Yep.
and we're going to kill each other over it. It's
Mm.
it's insane.
Mm.
So, your book, tell me a little bit about it. Tell me let's get into it just a little.
Yeah, so it's called Sober Witch Life. And as I was kind of sharing, I found that I was still, there's still like bits and pieces around the 12 step as I work them that I would shift, right? To how it would support into my spiritual path. And so we call it the 13 steps, the
Hmm.
witch's 13 steps to recovery. And that's very intentional in the 12-step program. When I heard what the 13th step was referred to, I got really upset. The number 13 to a witch is a very divine and feminine number. And so to have it being referred to in this like just not pleasant way,
Yeah, I
um,
turned that around to somebody taught me that the 13th step is dying sober, making it all the way to the end without drinking.
mm,
Not the what most people talk about, the 13th step, the
yeah,
predatory type thing.
I like
I
that dying
I
sober.
I,
That's a
I prefer to put the positive spin on it.
Yeah, no. So I rewrote it, and it's to do ritual to combat addiction, to release the world from this power, this presence that addiction's in. And so a lot of the steps are going to sound pretty familiar to folks, and I share like my story as I went along, kind of finding them, and like my recovery story is kind of built a bit into it, and and how I started at the 12-step tables and even not, my grandfather was a recovering alcoholic, and I
Hmm.
realized that he came into my grandmother's life with 8 children because of the 12th step. He tried to help my grandmother's oldest son, my uncle, yeah, so the 12th step brought my grandfather into our family. And so I share all these little, anecdotes and the stories and, uh, but I introduce this other way to kind of look at the 12 steps and to start to incorporate those pillars into it, right? The divination, the psychic abilities, the magic, right? Start doing a lot of this, transmutative work, this work that the 12 steps helps with, but in a way that is aligned to the practices that somebody would be familiar with if they're embracing witchcraft. Right? Giving them something that they can, my thought with this is if you go to a 12-step program, you can have this in your pocket and still be able to relate and not feel like you're lost. Like, I don't understand how this relates to my beliefs,
Hmm.
right? And, there's spell work in it. There's a lot of journal prompts and different rituals. And, there's even like a bonus at the end where if you don't want to do, you can't do any of it. Like you're like not able to go through them, right? The reality is some people step in and they're so overwhelmed energetically, right? So just like I give them like, just start here, just start protecting your energy, right? Just start protecting your energy and start creating kind of a space for yourself to do this work and then go back and start them. Because some of my belief is that the individuals that do identify as, a witch, a shaman, these highly sensitive and spiritual people, right, that just feel like they're a little bit different energetically, that we are very susceptible to the world around us. That if we walk into a room with I'll be real frank with you. We walk into a 12-step room and there's one or two people in there that are still really suffering. We may walk out worse than when we walked in,
I
right?
can understand
So,
that. Yeah.
yeah, so helping folks to understand like this could be the reason 12-step room tables have never felt good to you. You don't have protection up.
Hmm.
You're not protecting your energy. Like in yoga, you're not making sure that you're aligned and you're cleaning yourself off, after you do something. And then, let's be real, us witches love a good cauldron mix. I also include a whole bunch of mocktail recipes that are basically spells, right? Using different herbs and things in order
Wow.
to, create a potion, so to speak, that you can use, whether it's for, connection, serving it as a big punch. I've one that I love to make when I'm having big gatherings. Um, but yeah, it's a different way to step into recovery, and it's a different way to stay on that path. Even if it doesn't, even if you didn't use the whole bits and pieces, I've gotten such phenomenal feedback from it so far. Um, I know it was meant
Well,
to be
I think
birthed
Bill
with the
Wilson
world.
would sign off on that. I think he uses words in that that's meant. First off, he purposely did not like copyright it or do anything of that nature because he felt that it was divinely inspired and brought down here for anybody who wants to use it. So he could have very easily done something like that and tried to protect his intellectual property. He did not. There's words in it that like it's broad and roomy and all inclusive. Those kind of statements are all throughout the book of, come one, come all, come as you are. When I do my men's retreats and stuff, we smudge in. I take
Mm,
white sage and we smudge each other in to
mm,
create
mm-hmm.
the container is what I call it as we come together in here and create this safe space where we can share, uh, our real issues. I do ritualistic type stuff to create that safe container. So bringing, and some people would look at that, some of my more traditional 12-step people would look at that a little funny. I smudge
Yeah,
in my guys when we do a fifth step. The fifth step's kind of the confessional where you
yeah.
talk, and I take my guys down to the cabin and we spend the night and I feed them, I prepare a
Uh,
meal and we do it and make a ceremony out of it, so way that we were taught, the way I was taught and brought up is to do those kinds of things to make it special, because it
yeah.
is, make
That's
it a ceremony.
Yeah, that's really beautiful, and I wonder if you saying down in southern Indiana, you're starting to get into a lot of kind of there's like this backwoods magic that exists throughout the mountains as you start to hit down in there, and like people tend to be much more comfortable with you know, um, some of these types of traditions, and it's beautiful. Like I love, I heading down 75, going through, not usually Indiana, but Ohio, hitting Kentucky, Tennessee. It's like some of my favorite vacations is down, heading down in that way. So I think that's
Yes.
amazing. And that
Southern
that is
Indiana is
magic.
more like Kentucky, this
Yeah.
right along the Ohio River. People kind of think of Indiana, the northern part of it, as being flat, and it is.
Yeah. Oh
But
yeah.
you get down along the Ohio Valley, and it's pretty hillbilly kind of, it's hilly down here, and it's not mountains. That's not it, but it's certainly a long way from flat.
Yeah,
And
like
we do
by
have
probably
people
kind of how
that
Cincinnati starts, right?
yeah, about from Cincinnati on down
Yeah.
through there. Yep, yep. And I was brought up around people who used uh natural medicine. My grandmas and stuff like that would get dandelion and gravel root and various other stuff that they would pick out of, what most people would think of weeds.
Hmm.
Uh, my, I like to say I say my kid's mother. I don't like to say my ex-wife. I don't like the negative connotation of that. We were great friends today. We got, my alcoholism is what ended our marriage, but we are a team today. As a matter of fact, we're in a domestic partnership so that I can be in on her insurance because I've been self-employed for a few years, and she offered that to me. But she was going down to Alabama for a while, working with a indigenous gal down there, learning uh, in herbal medicine of
Mm.
different things. And my dad had a kidney stone that she mixed up a concoction and fixed him.
Oh yeah.
Because he didn't want to go to the doctor, typical males that don't want to go to the doctor. And I'm really
Yeah.
surprised that I've watched my dad grow too, where like uh, some females can talk him into doing some things that I can't talk him into doing.
Yeah, there's
Your
there's yeah, it's not a surprise. There's as I talked about, a lot of women tend to be drawn to like witchcraft and this type of practice of magic and healing and things of that nature. It's because it requires this very kind of intuitive, like you have to be in tune. You have to be able to talk to the plant. You have to be able to, you know, that's just kind of what it is. And so every person, man and woman, has that energetic in it, and women are just more forward with it. It's more of a dominant. And so your father can probably like just naturally trusts it because he knows that that's, kind of the long-standing tradition. That's why a lot of the times the healers in these communities have been women,
yeah,
right? Not exclusively. There are a lot of witch doctors. There are a lot of men, especially if you go down and you go into any of the indigenous cultures. There's not usually the gender roles just become a lot different. They
mm,
become a lot different. The Western world is where that masculine energy and the patriarchy, kind of steps in. And um, yeah, so I don't think it's a surprise that he trusted a little bit more.
yeah.
But you're also his son, so
Yeah, yeah, he doesn't, I get that. I envision that because I have a couple kids too, and I know that he still looks at me like I'm his 10-year-old boy, and
mhm.
I met another gal that I'm working with, that's a Cuban shaman from down in Miami that we met this way, and we've been sharing energy. I've been working with her on the 12 steps a little bit, and she's been sharing with me some of her stuff. She's took me through I'll here maybe Monday will be the third part of a zodiac meditation that she is. It's really touched me. I'm like the first time she did it with me, and we're doing it just like this. I felt like I got hypnotized, is what I felt like. Now, you can't, if you're not open to that, it wouldn't happen, right? So I'm open
Yeah.
to it. But when I came to, I had been crying and my shirt was wet. And it took a couple days to actually remember what had happened, and meeting some ancestors and stuff in that meditation. She did not drive me that way, though. She didn't take me there. She just let me go where I went. She guided, but didn't. I don't know what you say, how you would put that. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's
She
it's not
wasn't.
influenced. Yeah.
Yeah, she didn't like influence something specific, but she cultivated an
Yep.
environment, and that's where I went. It was very
Yeah.
interesting, and I like being open to that kind of stuff. That When I talk to her, uh, I get like the Kundalini chills up my spine and stuff when I'm engaging with her, you know. I could just like uh I feel like I'm purring like a cat, you know,
Yeah.
and I could just sit and listen to her, you know. And you know how sometimes you just hear, you get certain frequencies with certain people and you can hear them somehow differently that
Well,
and I feel
this
that with
goes
you too. I feel
this goes
that
back to that
that good
comment,
energy like
the
that I could.
higher self, right? They
Yep.
put her in your path for a particular reason. So there must be something beautiful that you're meant to explore with her,
Yep.
right? Whatever it is that she's supposed to bring you through. I mean, I'll tell you, sometimes it's hard for me because I know certain people are put into my path but there's a part of me that doesn't always want to let go, like when you like love or care about someone and you've taken them as far you've carried the baton with them, you've walked the path as far as you can, and then you start to see that it's time to let go, and it's like, but I don't want to.
Yep. Yep. Yep.
Yeah.
It happens in sponsorship in AA. You know,
Yeah.
there's I have a teacher that I really adore, and he speaks in my frequency. I've had him on my podcast a couple times, and he actually invited me to come down to his house in Nashville, and I did a couple weeks ago, and he did some work with me, a couple workshops on grief and anger. And
Mm.
he was supposed to be the guy who was supposed to be fishing with me today. Uh, Yes, I pray
Yeah.
that my
So,
sponsees outgrow me, and not that they're going to
yeah.
grow past him, but that he's given them
Yeah.
all he can give them, and they are still on the path of seeking more. And
Yeah.
I kind of adopt that philosophy too. But when you've worked with a guy for a few years and you bond. I mean,
Well,
you know each other's deepest, darkest secrets, and you come together, and then when they decide that they want a new teacher and they're going to move on and go with somebody else, I encourage it and I want them to do it, but there is a little bit of a heartbreak, you know. It's like
it's the grief.
it
It's
is.
the grief.
Yeah.
I've said this to a number of folks. We often think of grief just about losing a loved one or a friend or somebody that we've known, crossing over to the other side, their life no longer existing. But life is filled with a lot of different experiences that cause grief,
Yeah.
right? A lot. Like grief is loss, and changing a job involves grief. Moving to a new home involves grief. Having your children grow up and move out of the house involves grief,
Yep.
right? It's loss of one way that you used to know, and moving into and accepting something, a new existence. And
Yeah.
I think it's interesting. Interesting. I don't know that I've ever like paused and thought about this, so this is kind of cool. Um, Recovery itself, that struggle that everybody starts in, right? This whole like, I love this, this is amazing. And like, I wonder, maybe somebody else is already like rough, but like, that is an entire grief process, right?
Yeah.
My whole first year in recovery, when I look back at it now, felt like the cycle of grief,
Yeah.
right? The
And
whole
then, you know,
cycle.
the substances become your friend in a sense too. So
Mhm.
when you put them away, there is a kind of a grieving process of moving away from that, even though it was injuring you and it was bad for you. But still, there's a grieving process that happens when you had to like put that friend to bed.
Yeah. Oh
And that's
yeah.
one of the
Yeah.
things
No.
that Scott worked with me and give me some tools when I was down there with him on that in Nashville. So because my toolbox can't be full enough, right? If somebody's offering me tools, I'm going, sign me up.
Yeah. No,
I want them.
that's a really good one. And I'll have to give some thought about that one, because I think it does hit us a lot harder. And it's another point where people, I think, would tend to want to isolate, right? The
Hmm.
grief process is not one that um, allows us to easily connect, right? If you think about it in that way, like
Yeah.
most people prefer to grieve alone. Um, wow. Why do we do that? That's so interesting. Oh, that's given me some. I'm doing this Saturday, my partner and I, he's also in recovery, so I'm very blessed with that. Him and
Hmm.
I are doing this sound bath, and
Nice.
I haven't done this one. It's all gongs, but it's a shamanic journey. It's a 2 hour And so we're gonna see, we're gonna see where in the world, but I have a feeling that there's something uh about grief is what I'm being told. There's gonna be
Interesting.
an yeah, yeah, there's gonna be an interesting I love them. Their sound is one of my I think most potent healers that I've experienced in my recovery. And early on, I used binaural beats a lot. I used frequencies a lot in my first year in recovery. I told you I jumped into the tarot cards, but shortly, probably about 30 days into like reading, I got called to do it's the second time in my life I've done this deeply intensive study of the chakras, where I
Mm.
just like go as deep as I can. And yeah, I just started to do a lot of my healing around, my chakras, going through all of the root and the sacral and the solar plexus and, going through and I find that I learn really well when I teach. So I brought other people along with everything that I learned. I would teach it, like a couple of weeks later. And but sound was one of the most
Yeah,
beneficial parts of that.
if I, and this again, what I've learned is every chakra has a note that's
Hmm.
associated with it. I
Yeah.
know that when I hear an F, I can feel it. I have a very
Hmm.
strong heart chakra, and
Hmm.
like I can play that. And I'd learned that by accident. It just was a thing. I was like, I really like that. Then and to be the different sounds. Well, I have a friend who has a meditation shop here in town, and he sells crystals and
Yes.
incense and singing bowls and
Yep.
chimes, and he mics up. He does a meditation with the seven note different notes
Mm.
in the 432 megahertz, I think, if that's right, and he mics them
Yep.
up. He puts a
Yeah.
microphone in them, and it has a really good PA system, and man, you feel it into your bones.
Mm.
And he does this meditation every so often. I always, when it's coming up, I always tell people, do not miss it. You want to experience this once anyway. It really, I love that stuff too. I've done it with there's some yoga festival down in Kentucky too that we were at one time, and they all had us sitting with our heads to the inside of this, laying down on our backs, and the instruments were in the middle, and
Mm.
they played them, and it was a sound bath.
Mhm.
Really, I will always remember that too.
No, I've had many experiences. I'm a certified Reiki master, but
Oh, are you?
my teacher and my master was is also a sound healer. And so that's how I met her. Is I showed up. I had no intentions of being, but one of the things with, being in recovery, leading this incredibly, deeply beautiful spiritual life, I go where I'm told, and I don't always know why. you know, I end up taking this sound bath at this little store, not too far from my house. And afterwards, I start telling her, like, I really appreciate that. Thank you so much. It was so beautiful. And, she's sharing a little bit. And all of a sudden, she tells me she's a Reiki teacher, and I hear it in my ear, like, you should go. And I was like, okay. And so, yeah. Um, yeah,
Yeah, I have a number of friends who are Reiki masters. Usually there will be a couple of them down at that at my
mhm.
retreat doing we'll do sessions on people just
Oh,
as an
yeah.
aside, they'll take them in the cabin and offer Reiki and I have a really, this I am one two thing. Uh, generally we try to stay the same gender when we sponsor people, generally.
Yeah.
But with that, we get to break some rules because we get to make up, like we say, there are no rules and we're going to break them all. And and I've had the pleasure to sponsor some women, and that brought some things into my life that I would never have gotten had I not done
Yeah.
that and took that chance, and have really become really good friends with one in particular, April, and she's a Reiki master. And she'll send it to me. She lives an hour away,
Yep.
and I can feel her energy when
Yeah.
she'll send it to me. It's so cool.
It is very cool. It is. It is very cool. And I love that I love that you guys do that. I love that you're talking about this because to me, you know, this is, and even your show, like there is no one way to recover, right? The more we know, the more options, the more paths, the more people have the ability to heal. And the reality is addiction is a sickness, and it doesn't just show up in drugs and alcohol too.
Nope.
Yeah. So the more paths that we open, and that's why I tell people all the time, I get all these questions like, do I have to be recovering from alcohol? No. They're like, do I have to be sober from everything? I'm like, I don't get to tell your sober journey. I don't, like if you need harm reduction because that's what you need to let something, that's your choice, right? Your choice. The only thing I'm here to do is to encourage you to make yourself better tomorrow than you are today. That's it.
Yep. Right.
That's it.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. What the Buddha has said it for a long time, to set down the things that are not serving you.
Yep.
And we know that too.
Yeah.
We know what we're doing that is not working for us.
Mhm.
You might need a little help. That's another thing. I've always found that these. I need a guide. I need a helper. My sponsor, my friends are that. My
Yep.
support group can point things out to me that I don't see.
Yeah.
And this stuff is awful hard to do alone, as you were saying before.
Yeah.
And somebody that's down the path a little bit further can help you out. And then, you know, uh, it seems kind of a funny thing because sooner or later the student becomes the teacher. And
Mm. I always hope for that. There's nothing that I love more than learning. And when I get to learn from the people that are around me or the people that I'm able to share with, I'm fascinated. I'm enamored. I'm like a little tiny, little kid just looking, just please tell me more.
yep, yep. I eat it up. I just think that you said it in a nutshell. When we talk about our group, I say it's men helping men be better men. And
Mm.
it's and I'm part. We're. I caught a little bit of grief last night from somebody because we are a men's group, and this lady wishes she could be in it, and uh, and they have. There's a group of women here locally that have kind of modeled this. We're 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 kind of progressive in the AA world, all this stuff, sound baths and stuff like that's not out of the ordinary for us,
Yeah.
but you don't really see that in very
No.
many meetings. We might meditate for an entire meeting,
Mm.
and you don't see that too often either around
Oh
here.
no, I mean, yeah, no, I a lot of times in the recovery circle that I host, we'll pull a tarot card, we'll do some journal prompts, we'll do some sharing, but I reserve the right, like if spirit speaks or somebody brings up. So Monday nights, I was told we're going to talk about dreams. So we talked about dreams because for the last week and a half now, I've had more dreams involving drinking than I have in the
Mm,
last 5.5 years.
interesting.
It's been very interesting. And I have a dear friend of mine who's been in them, and I hadn't talked to them in a long time. And so I checked in with them. I said, "How are you?" And they said, I'm not doing well. I'm
Mm.
overwhelmed." And it's an old drinking buddy too, right? And so they proceeded to tell me they separated from their husband last week.
Oh,
And I'm like,
wow.
oh no, right? I'm like, oh no. And so I'm like, what are you doing? What are you doing this weekend? You want to go to the beach? I'm like, we'll see, because they haven't. We talked for like the day, but they haven't told me whether or not they want to hang out this weekend. But yeah, it was yeah. So we talked about dreams and what they mean and why you might want to listen to them and how they can be helpful. And yeah,
Yeah, that's a
uh,
great topic.
oh, it was really good. It was a really good topic. Yeah, yeah, it was really good.
Well, it's been a pleasure talking to you. We're a little bit over an hour, and I try to keep it about that long. I think I have your book information in the email, so I will make sure and put that. Yep, yep. You've given me an actual link, so I can put that in the show
Awesome.
notes. And I try to be kind of just in time with these. I, I used to try I made myself a commitment that I will put out new content every Sunday, but sometimes I get ahead, and I don't like to make people wait, so I just release them. I put them out and release them, and put them out and release them. And then if I go dry for a little bit, then that's just what happens every once in a while. And but right now, I've got a lot. I got a lot of guests knocking on the door, so expect to see a couple links. You okay with me putting it on YouTube?
Yeah, you're all good putting it wherever you need to. Just
Okay.
let me know, and I will. I do some stuff on my end to make sure that it's shared on my side too.
Yep,
So
yep, yep. So I'll send you the links when it comes out, and
awesome.
we'll do it. It's been fun talking to you. I really enjoy your energy, and I
Same,
loved. I
Dan.
just, this. I say this often, but if you're looking around, it can look like the world's a pretty rough place. But I keep on bumping into these people who are forces for good, that are carrying a good message and doing good things. And as always, I know the light will overcome the dark, and it's
Mhm.
just great to see all these people carrying the light
I agree. I agree. Thanks for doing
like
your
you
part
are.
as well.
Yeah. Enjoy the rest of your evening, and I will be in touch.
Thanks, Dan. Take care.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye bye.